talk about?
Moses.
Boom! Moses. We've been talking about Moses a lot. He's got a lot to offer, and there's many different angles that we can approach him and his story and what he's all about. But this week is really the meat of the lesson. Right? It's called No Limits. The theme for tonight is literally, there's no limits with God. So when I found out about this job, I made up my resume, all that good stuff, which wasn't much because all of that is intern. So it was like a page. Very impressive. But anyway, so I made the resume. I sent it in to Doug and Mark. And really, the intention of me sending it in was, I thought, I'll get to go through the interview process. I'll learn a little bit about what I need to change. I'll learn a little bit about just kind of how the whole thing works. I really didn't, honestly, I didn't think that this is what would come out of it. But I'm super excited that it did. Very, very blessed and excited that happened. So throughout that process, there were literally 3 key people, but obviously there were a lot more that really kind of spurred me on. One, of course, was Michelle. She was behind me the whole way, very supportive. It was like, you got this, you know? And then Mark and Doug. And we met with them. How many times did we? So many times. It felt like every other week they were calling, like, hey, let's meet again. And I was like, did I get the job or not? Like, just tell me already. I don't know. So we got a lot of coffee out of it. And a couple times at the Abuelos. So that was cool. But, so there were those 3 people that really were behind me in the whole thing. And it was through their influence and through their presence and their encouragement that I'm here today, honestly. Because it wasn't a place where I thought we were going to be. I didn't think I was capable of doing this. There was a lot of anxiety towards myself and a lot of self-doubt that I was like, I can't do this, I don't know what I'm doing. But it was through them that I'm here. So there's power in belief, more specifically, the belief of somebody else. Quite frankly, their belief can turn into your confidence. What do I mean by that? Simply what I said. I didn't think I could do this. It was belief in 3 key people that spurred me on. And it's now giving me confidence to stand up here in front of you guys and just stare at me the whole time, right? It's kind of scary. That light gets a little hot. It's only that one. I don't understand. But it happens. So sometimes others' beliefs can affect us in a negative way, right? What do I mean by that? Sometimes you've been believed in too much. What I mean by that is there's times when you've got parents or teachers or a coach maybe that sets bars, the bar standard so high that you feel like you're never going to achieve it. It's so much pressure that you're like, man, like I have to perform at my absolute best in order to reach that. Or there's times when you feel like people believe in you too little, when there's seemingly no support, when there's nobody behind you saying, hey, you got this. It's a struggle, right? There's a lot of tension. And so whether somebody believes in you just enough, too much, or not enough, the truth is it's easy to get paralyzed by others' expectations. Sometimes you've got people that are pushing you too hard. Sometimes you don't have anybody pushing you. You just get stuck. Like, what am I supposed to do? It happens to all of us. So in session 1, we talked about Moses, right? We talked about his story of how growing up, first he was a Hebrew, right? And there was the ban on all the babies, they were going to kill them all, so he got tossed in a basket, floated upriver, gets downriver. How that works. Gravity. They didn't have gravity back in the day. Just kidding. Okay, so he floats downriver. He gets picked up by Pharaoh's daughter, so now all of a sudden he's Egyptian royalty. And then he grows up, and he sees an Egyptian beating upon a Hebrew, his people, both of his people. He kills the Egyptian. So now he's running from the Egyptians, and Israelites are mad at him because now the Egyptians hate him even more. And it's just like, what's he going to do? He's kind of in a, in a bad spot. And so he gets called by God to free his people, to say, hey, I want you to go to Pharaoh, and I want you to tell him let the people go. And instantly, Moses is like, I don't know about that. I really don't know about that. So let's read what he says. We're going to be in Exodus 3, verse 11 through 14. Okay, so check this out. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? So immediately Moses is like, why me? Like, what do I have to do? I'm not special. And God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. And Moses said to God, okay, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what am I going to tell them? So God says to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. What does that mean? God says, I am has sent you. Is that like improper grammar? What is it like? What is that? And if y'all remember, if you remember last week, Steve's the guy who led worship. One of the songs we sang was called The Great I Am. And in that song, it says, Great I Am, really is what he's talking about. But what Steve said was, what that means is God's the same. God's the same yesterday, he's the same today, he's the same tomorrow. He's I am. I am who I am. That's how it's going to stay. And this was a big deal for Moses. Because God said, I am with you. And suddenly, Moses realized the key thing that we're talking about. That with God, there's no limits. There's no limits what you can do. And what God did was he changed Moses' perspective. Because now, God was saying, look, before, when you were unsure, you were relying on your own abilities. And God says, I'm giving you a future that is not dependent on your abilities, but it's dependent on mine, which is limitless. That was huge for Moses. It was a game changer. And so he goes to Pharaoh 10 times. He goes to Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh's stubborn, I guess. That's what he does. And every time he began with this phrase. Every time Moses walked up to Pharaoh, he said, this is what the Lord says. And that's a big deal because Moses was realizing that he wasn't doing this on his own. There was no way that he was going to walk into Egypt, Pharaoh, the strongest man to the known world at that time, and say, hey, those slaves are mine. You mind letting them go? He'd be like, nope. I don't think so. So Moses realized that God's the only way he's going to get through this. Because he always continued to go back to God's promise. He said, I'm with you. I am with you. I'm not going to change. That's not going to change. So that's all good and well for Moses, right? What does that mean for us? How does this apply to us? I know we're not all dealing with a Pharaoh, or we don't have the pressure of having to walk up to a sea and make it part. I don't think any of you have ever done that. That'd be cool, but we don't have that pressure. But we do have pressure to get good grades so that we get into college, so that we get a scholarship. We have pressure to stay up late and finish homework so that we don't disappoint our parents. We have pressure to practice extra so that we do good on the chair test, or so that we get to start in 12 and team. We are full of pressure. And there are so many expectations that are put on us. So what do we do? How do we deal with this? My answer is we start where Moses did, with God. Start with God. A lot of times we go through all these struggles and everything that we're dealing with, and then later we're like, oh, it'd be nice if you could help me with this. That's not what Moses did. Start with God. Because yes, your ability is limited, quite frankly. But with God, there's no limits. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean that, like, I love baseball. And My dream when I was growing up was to play professional baseball. That doesn't mean that I can sit at home and be like, God, I would really love to be a baseball player. And I know there's no limits with you, so if we could just make that happen and add a couple zeros to my contract, I would really appreciate that. That's not how it works. When we're called to do something, when God calls us and says, hey, I want you, then there's limitless power. Don't miss that. And it may be confusing. That may be confusing to you. But we'll deal with that. Okay? That I might want you to ask yourself this question. What am I avoiding right now? Because I don't think I can succeed. What in your life are you struggling with? And are you just saying, you know what, I'm not even going to deal with it because there's no way that I'm going to be successful. What is that? I remember you've all got that. You've all got those areas. And if you knew that God was with you no matter what, how would that change things in your life? How would that change your perspective? How would you look at yourself differently? If you truly believe that God was with you and there was no limits to what you could do through Him, with Him. What are some things that you would start doing? What are some things that you would stop doing? Maybe you just put a lot of pressure on yourself to do well. You know what? It's not always up to you. You can do your best, but sometimes things just aren't going to fall the way they need to fall, the way you want them to. And you can't put that pressure on yourself. So maybe you need to start doing some things. Maybe you just need to look at yourself differently. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is for you. But one thing that I want you to remember, if you hear nothing else tonight, hear this. There's no limit with God. Sometimes we think that God is our tool. Totally reversed. God doesn't. We don't. Sorry. God uses us. We don't use God. Does that make sense? God is God. He chooses to use us to advance His kingdom. He doesn't have to. But He loves us enough to say, I want you to be a part of this. With me, there's no limit. One of my favorite verses is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So what is it that you need to change? How do you need to change the way that you look at yourself? Maybe you just need somebody in your corner to say, look, I'm behind you on this. Maybe you just need some support. And if you want that to be us, we already are supporting. I promise you that. But if you're not getting that, come talk to us and say, look, I just need you in my corner. All right, what color are you? All right. With God, there's no limit. Do not forget that. And go to that first. Don't make that a last resort. That should be your priority. Let's pray. God, we come to you tonight and we are grateful, and God, we are just overwhelmed to know that we serve a God who has limitless power. And then at the same time chooses to use us to advance His kingdom. That blows my mind that you would choose me, and you would choose a guy like Moses. And you would choose people that are just a mess. And I think you do that because you know that it makes us way more prone to rely on you, because we know we're a mess. We can't do without you. So God, I pray that as we go to small group, that we would just look inside and think of the areas that we are trying so hard to just do on our own. And we're failing miserably at it. And then we would just hand that to you and say, you know what? God, I know there's no limits with you, and I really need you. I really need you in this one. God, we know that you are constant. You are, I am, and you don't change. We're grateful for that. We're amazed that we serve that God. So pray that as school wraps up, that God, that we would hand our stresses over to you, that we would just hand over many things that are just beating us down as we try to finish strong. Pray that you would help us to remember, God, just to always look to you first in everything we do.